The sound of gunfire echoed through the dusty streets of Caldwell, Kansas, as Olivia Owens clutched her few belongings and ducked behind a water trough. This wasn't how she'd planned to arrive in town in the middle of what appeared to be a shootout between the local sheriff and a band of would-be bank robbers. But then again, nothing in Olivia's life ever seemed to go according to plan. Some called it misfortune. She called it the curse that followed her like a shadow. "Get down, miss," a deep voice commanded as a tall figure dove beside her, shielding her with his broad shoulders. Dust billowed around them as more shots rang out. Olivia's heart hammered in her chest as she found herself face to face with the most striking pair of blue eyes she'd ever seen, set in a sun-bronzed face partially hidden by a well-worn Stetson. "You picked one hell of a day to come to Caldwell," the stranger said with a half-smile that somehow managed to be both rueful and reassuring. "I didn't pick it," Olivia responded, her voice steadier than she felt. "Trouble has a way of finding me." The shooting stopped as suddenly as it had begun. In the distance, she could hear the sheriff shouting that they'd got two of the bandits while the others had fled. "Looks like it's over," the man said, peering cautiously over the trough. "Name's Wyatt Rivers. I run the Triple R ranch outside of town." He stood and offered his hand to help her up. Olivia hesitated before taking it. "Olivia Owens, I'm here to take the teaching position." Wyatt's eyebrows rose. "The school teacher. Town's been waiting on you for 2 weeks." "The stage coach broke down twice," Olivia explained, brushing dust from her traveling dress. "Then there was a flash flood that washed out the road. And now this." She gestured to the aftermath of the gunfight. "They say I bring bad luck," she warned, unable to keep the bitterness from her voice. The cowboy smiled and said, "I've been due for some luck. Good or bad, it makes no difference to me." Olivia stared at him, taken aback by his cavalier response. Most people edged away when they learned of her reputation. This man, this Wyatt Rivers, had just stepped closer. "Come on, Miss Owens. Let me help you to the boarding house. Mrs. Patterson's been keeping a room ready for you." As they walked down the main street of Caldwell, Olivia couldn't help but notice the whispers that followed them. This town, like all the others, would soon learn about her strange curse. And then the accidents would begin minor at first, then increasingly severe until she would have no choice but to move on again. She'd hoped Caldwell would be different, far enough west that her reputation wouldn't follow her, a place where she might finally put down roots. But as Wyatt Rivers guided her through town, nodding at townsfolk who eyed her with curiosity, Olivia knew better than to hope. Hope only made the inevitable disappointment that much harder to bear. "Don't mind them," Wyatt said, correctly interpreting her discomfort. "They're just not used to seeing someone new, especially someone as—" He paused, seeming to search for the right word. "Someone as what, Mr. Rivers?" Olivia challenged. "Someone as interesting as you," he finished with a genuine smile that made her heart skip in a way she immediately tried to suppress. Getting attached to anyone or anywhere only led to heartache. She'd learned that lesson over and over again. When they reached the boarding house, a plump woman with gray-streaked hair hurried out to meet them. "Oh my stars, you must be our new teacher. We'd nearly given up hope, Mrs. Patterson. This is Miss Olivia Owens," Wyatt introduced them. "She had some trouble on the road and arrived just in time for a gunfight." Mrs. Patterson clucked her tongue. "What a welcome to Caldwell. Come inside, dear. You must be exhausted." Olivia turned to thank Wyatt, but he had already tipped his hat. "I'll be seeing you around, Miss Owens. School term starts next week, doesn't it? My niece Emma will be in your class. Smart as a whip, that one." "Yes. Thank you for your help, Mr. Rivers." "Wyatt," he corrected. "Folks around here just call me Wyatt." As he walked away, leading his horse down the street, Olivia couldn't help but watch him go. There was something different about him, a steadiness, perhaps. A man who seemed unmoved by superstition or hearsay. But they all started that way. Friendly and welcoming until the accidents began. Until livestock went missing or wells ran dry or fires broke out. Until they began to whisper that Olivia Owens carried misfortune with her like a disease. "Come along, dear," Mrs. Patterson urged, taking her arm. "Let's get you settled." Inside the boarding house, Olivia's room was small but clean, with a narrow bed, a writing desk, and a window that looked out onto the main street of Caldwell. Mrs. Patterson fussed around her, explaining about meal times and bath schedules, pointing out the school building visible a few blocks away. "Town's been without a proper teacher since Miss Hargrove left to get married last spring," the landlady explained. "Mayor Taylor has had his wife filling in, but she's expecting their fourth child and can't manage much longer. We're all mighty relieved you've arrived." Relieved now, Olivia thought grimly. But how long would that last? "I should warn you," Olivia began, feeling the familiar weight of honesty pressing on her. "Better they know now than be surprised later. I've had difficulties in previous positions. Things tend to go wrong around me." Mrs. Patterson waved a dismissive hand. "Pish-posh. We all have our troubles, dear. This is the frontier, nothing's easy out here. Now rest up. Supper's at 6 sharp." After the landlady left, Olivia sank onto the bed, wondering how long she had before the whispers started, before the parents began keeping their children home from school, before the town council asked her politely but firmly to move on. She unpacked her few belongings. 2 dresses besides the one she wore, a nightgown, some undergarments, a hairbrush, and her most treasured possessions, books. Shakespeare, Austen, Dickens, and several primers for teaching. Books were faithful companions. They never whispered behind her back or crossed the street to avoid her. As she placed the books on the small shelf above the desk, Olivia caught sight of a rider outside her window. Wyatt Rivers was heading out of town, sitting tall in the saddle. Something about the confident set of his shoulders made her pause. "I've been due for some luck," he'd said. As if bad luck were merely a debt to be paid, rather than a curse to be feared. For the first time in a long while, Olivia allowed herself to wonder, what if Caldwell could be different? The school bell rang bright and early Monday morning, its clear tone cutting through the crisp September air. Olivia stood at the door of the one-room schoolhouse, heart pounding as she watched children of various ages making their way toward her. Some walked confidently, others hung back, eyeing her with the natural suspicion children reserve for new authority figures. "Good morning," she greeted each one with a smile, trying to memorize names and faces as parents introduced their offspring. "Billy Taylor, Miss Owens." "Mayor's son," said a pompous man with an impressive mustache. "He's a spirited boy but smart as they come." "Sally and John Peterson," said a harried-looking woman with a baby on her hip. "Mind your manners, you two." On and on it went, until nearly 20 children were seated at the desks inside. Olivia had just turned to close the door when a horse thundered up, and Wyatt Rivers dismounted, helping down a girl of about 12 with long dark braids and his same striking blue eyes. "Sorry we're late, Miss Owens," he said, slightly breathless. "Emma's pony threw a shoe on the way in." The girl Emma rolled her eyes. "Uncle Wyatt insisted on bringing me himself. I told him I could walk the rest of the way." "And I told you no niece of mine is walking 3 miles to school when I have a perfectly good horse," Wyatt countered, then turned to Olivia with a smile. "She's stubborn as they come, Miss Owens. Takes after her mother, my sister." Olivia couldn't help but return his smile. "Stubbornness can be a virtue when properly directed, Mr. Rivers. I'm sure Emma and I will get along just fine." Emma beamed and hurried inside to find a seat. Wyatt lingered a moment longer, his eyes meeting Olivia's. "How are you settling in?" he asked, his voice low enough that the children inside couldn't hear. "Well enough," Olivia replied, though in truth, she'd spent the weekend jumping at shadows, waiting for the first sign of her curse to manifest. "Thank you for asking. Town socials coming up Saturday," he said, shifting his weight. "Harvest celebration. Thought you might like to know, being new and all." Was he inviting her? Olivia couldn't tell, and she dared not ask. "Mrs. Patterson mentioned it," she said instead. "I'm looking forward to meeting more of the community." Wyatt nodded, seeming almost disappointed. "Well, I'd better let you get to teaching. I'll be back to fetch Emma at 3. He tipped his hat and swung back onto his horse. Olivia watched him ride away before turning her attention to her class. 20 curious faces stared back at her, ready to measure and judge their new teacher. "Good morning," she began, writing her name on the blackboard. "I'm Miss Owens, and I'm very pleased to meet all of you." The morning progressed better than she had dared to hope. The children were largely attentive, if fidgety, and seemed eager to impress her with what they already knew. Even Billy Taylor, who clearly fancied himself above school rules, settled down after she assigned him to help the younger children with their letters. By noon, Olivia was feeling cautiously optimistic. Perhaps her luck had finally turned. But as the children filed out for their midday meal, she noticed dark clouds gathering on the horizon. A sudden wind kicked up, sending leaves and dust swirling through the schoolyard. "Storm's coming," said Emma, who had lingered behind to ask a question about the arithmetic lesson. "Uncle Wyatt says it's going to be a big one." As if in answer, a low rumble of thunder sounded in the distance. The other children, who had been playing in the yard, began to look nervous. "Everyone back inside," Olivia called. "We'll continue our lessons until the storm passes." The children had barely retaken their seats when the sky opened up. Rain lashed against the windows with a fury Olivia had rarely seen. The wind howled around the eaves of the schoolhouse, and several of the younger children began to whimper. "It's just a storm," Olivia assured them, though her own heart was racing. "Please, not today, not so soon. Let's use this time to learn about weather. Who can tell me what causes thunder?" She had just gotten them engaged in a science lesson when a particularly violent gust of wind tore a branch from a nearby tree, sending it crashing through one of the windows. Glass shattered, and children screamed as rain and wind invaded the classroom. "Everyone to the far side of the room," Olivia ordered, keeping her voice calm though her thoughts were racing. "It's happening again. The curse is working already." She was herding the last child to safety when the door burst open. Wyatt Rivers stood there, drenched and wild-eyed. "Is everyone all right?" he demanded, scanning the room until his gaze found Emma. "We're fine," Olivia assured him, though she was shaking. "Just a broken window. Town's flooding," Wyatt said grimly. "Creeks overflowed its banks, mayors organizing evacuation to higher ground." Parents began arriving to collect their children, faces tight with worry. As the schoolhouse emptied, Olivia stood amid the wreckage of her classroom, watching rain pour through the broken window. "It's my fault," she whispered when only Wyatt and Emma remained. "What's your fault?" Wyatt asked, coming to stand beside her. "The storm. The flooding. It follows me, don't you see? Disaster follows wherever I go." Wyatt studied her face for a long moment. "Miss Owens, storms happen out here. Floods, too, has nothing to do with you." "You don't understand," Olivia insisted. "This has happened before. Every town I go to something goes wrong. People get hurt. They blame me, and they're right to." "Uncle Wyatt," Emma interrupted. "Shouldn't we be helping with the evacuation?" Wyatt nodded, but his eyes remained on Olivia. "You coming with us, Miss Owens?" Olivia hesitated. Part of her wanted to refuse to stay behind and let the flood take her, ending the curse once and for all. But the larger part, the part that still hoped despite everything, nodded. "Let me gather my books." They rode together on Wyatt's horse, Emma perched in front of him and Olivia behind, her arms reluctantly circling his waist to keep from falling as they navigated the flooded streets. The rain had lessened, but the creek that ran through the center of Caldwell had become a raging river, sweeping away fences and threatening the lower-lying buildings. Wyatt led them to higher ground at the edge of town, where most of the townsfolk had gathered. The mayor was organizing shelter in the church and several larger homes. Mrs. Patterson bustled over as soon as she spotted them. "Oh, Miss Owens, thank heavens you're safe. The boarding house is underwater, first floor at least. You'll stay with me at my sister's home." Olivia nodded numbly, sliding down from the horse with Wyatt's help. His hand lingered on her waist a moment longer than necessary, steadying her. "This isn't your doing," he said quietly, his blue eyes intense. "You hear me? Storms happen." She wanted desperately to believe him. But as she looked around at the displaced families, the crying children, the men grimly discussing damage and livestock losses, Olivia knew better. This was only the beginning. Days passed, and the waters receded. The town of Caldwell began the work of rebuilding. To Olivia's surprise, no one seemed to connect the flood with her arrival, at least not openly. Instead, they spoke of similar floods in years past, comparing damage and swapping stories of close calls. The school building had suffered only minor damage beyond the broken window, and classes resumed the following week. Olivia threw herself into teaching, determined to make a positive impact while she could before the next disaster struck, before the whispers started, before she would have to move on again. Every afternoon, Wyatt Rivers arrived to collect Emma, and every afternoon he found some reason to linger. He asked about Emma's progress, discussed the weather, offered to fix the broken window himself. His presence became a constant that Olivia both looked forward to and dreaded. The more she came to know him, with his quiet strength and unexpected gentleness, the more she feared what her curse might do to him. As the Saturday of the harvest social approached, Olivia found herself torn. Part of her longed to attend, to feel for one evening like she belonged. The other part feared what might happen if she did. "You're coming tomorrow, aren't you?" Emma asked Friday afternoon as she gathered her books. "Uncle Wyatt's been practicing his dancing all week." Olivia felt heat rise to her cheeks. "Has he now?" Emma nodded solemnly. "He's terrible at it. Stomped on my toes at least 10 times, but he says a man should know how to dance proper for a lady." "Is that so?" Olivia tried to sound merely amused, but her heart was racing. "Well, I'm not sure if I'll attend." "I have lessons to prepare and you have to come," Emma interrupted, her expression suddenly serious. "Uncle Wyatt's been alone too long. My ma says so. Ever since my pa died in the war, Uncle Wyatt's been taking care of us and the ranch, and he never does anything for himself." Olivia didn't know how to respond to the child's earnest plea. "Emma, it's not that simple." He likes you," Emma pressed, lowering her voice though they were alone in the classroom. "I can tell. He gets all flustered when he's coming to pick me up. Checks his hair in the reflection of the water trough and everything." The image made Olivia smile despite herself. Wyatt Rivers, with his easy confidence and steady gaze, flustered over his appearance. "Please come," Emma begged, "just for a little while." Before Olivia could answer, the door opened and Wyatt himself appeared. "Ready to go, Squirt?" he asked Emma, then tipped his hat to Olivia. "Miss Owens." "Mr. Rivers." Emma looked between them and rolled her eyes in a manner far too adult for her 12 years. "I'm ready." Miss Owens was just saying she might come to the social tomorrow. Wyatt's eyebrows rose. Is that so? Put on the spot, Olivia could only nod. If the weather holds. I'll save you a dance then, he said with a smile that made her knees weak. After they left, Olivia sank into her chair, pressing her hands to her burning cheeks. This was dangerous not just for her, but for Wyatt and Emma too. She'd seen what happened to those who got too close to her. The accidents, the losses, the inevitable blame. And yet, I've been due for some luck, he'd said that first day. Perhaps, just this once, she could pretend to be normal. Could spend one evening enjoying the company of a handsome cowboy who didn't seem afraid of her alleged curse. Could dance and laugh and forget for a few hours the shadow that hung over her life. What harm could one dance do? The harvest social was held in the town square, which had been transformed with lanterns, bunting, and tables laden with food. A small band played lively tunes, and couples of all ages twirled around a makeshift dance floor. Olivia had agonized over her appearance, finally settling on her best dress, a deep blue that brought out the amber flecks in her brown eyes. Mrs. Patterson had insisted on helping her style her hair, pinning the chestnut waves into an elegant knot with a few curls left loose to frame her face. "You look lovely, dear," the landlady had assured her. "You'll have every eligible bachelor in Caldwell falling at your feet." But Olivia only cared about one man's opinion, a realization that both thrilled and terrified her. She arrived at the social with Mrs. Patterson, immediately scanning the crowd for Wyatt. She spotted Emma first, playing a game with other children near the refreshment table. Then she saw him, standing with a group of men, his tall frame easy to distinguish. He wore a clean white shirt with a vest, his usual dusty cowboy hat replaced by a newer one. Even from a distance, he looked handsome enough to make her heart flutter. As if sensing her gaze, Wyatt turned, his eyes finding hers across the crowded square. A smile spread across his face and he excused himself from the group, making his way toward her. "You came," he said simply when he reached her, his voice warm with pleasure. "I did promise Emma," Olivia replied, trying to sound casual though her pulse was racing. "Just Emma, huh?" he teased, offering his arm. "Well, I'm grateful to my niece then. Can I get you some punch?" The evening passed in a blur of conversation, laughter, and cautious joy. Wyatt introduced her to what felt like every resident of Caldwell, from the blacksmith to the banker's wife. To her surprise, people seemed genuinely pleased to meet her, complimenting her on her teaching and welcoming her to their community. "See," Wyatt murmured as they stood at the edge of the dance floor, watching couples twirl to a lively reel. No disasters, no bad luck, just a pleasant evening with pleasant company. Olivia bit her lip. "The night's still young, Mr. Rivers." "Indeed it is, Miss Owens," he agreed with a slow smile. "And I believe I was promised a dance." The band transitioned to a waltz, and Wyatt led her onto the dance floor. His hand was warm at her waist, his other holding hers with gentle firmness. "I should warn you," he said as they began to move to the music. "Emma wasn't exaggerating about my dancing abilities." "I'll risk it," Olivia replied, surprised at her own boldness. Despite his warning, Wyatt moved with unexpected grace. They glided across the dance floor, his eyes never leaving hers, and for the first time in years, Olivia felt truly seen not as a harbinger of misfortune, but as a woman. "Why aren't you afraid of me?" she asked suddenly, the question that had been burning inside her since their first meeting finally escaping. Wyatt's steps faltered slightly, but he recovered, guiding her through a turn before answering. "Should I be? Most people are once they learn about my reputation." "I don't put much stock in reputations, Miss Owens. I prefer to judge folks by their actions." His hand tightened slightly on her waist. "And from what I've seen, You're a dedicated teacher, a kind woman, and the prettiest dance partner I've ever had." The compliment warmed her through, but she persisted. "You don't understand. Things happen around me, bad things." "The flood was a natural occurrence," he interrupted firmly. "Had nothing to do with you." "There will be more," she warned. "There always is." Wyatt's blue eyes held hers steadily. "Then we'll face them together." The simple declaration took her breath away. Together. As if he were committing himself to her, curse and all. The music ended and they stood motionless amid the dispersing couples, connected by more than just their joined hands. "Miss Owens, Olivia," Wyatt began, his voice low and earnest. "I know we haven't known each other long, but I feel a scream cut through the night air, shattering the moment." They turned to see a lantern toppling from its hook, flames catching on the dry bunting that decorated the square. Within seconds, fire was spreading across the decorations, leaping toward the nearby buildings. "Fire!" someone shouted, and chaos erupted. Olivia stood frozen, watching in horror as her curse manifested once again. Beside her, Wyatt sprang into action. "Get the children away," he ordered, pushing her toward where Emma stood with the other young ones. "I'll help with the bucket line." Men were already organizing, forming a chain from the town well to the flames. Women gathered children and elderly, moving them to safety. Olivia herded the children to the far side of the square, counting heads to ensure none had wandered off in the confusion. "It's my fault," she whispered, watching the flames leap higher. "It's happening again." Emma, standing beside her, frowned. "What's your fault, Miss Owens?" "The fire." "The flood. Everything that goes wrong, it follows me, Emma." The girl's expression turned skeptical. "That's silly. Billy Taylor knocked over the lantern. I saw him showing off, trying to do a handstand near the post." Olivia stared at her. "What? Billy? He was being stupid like usual." Emma pointed to where the mayor's son stood with his parents, looking guilty and frightened. "See? His pa's giving him what for right now." Olivia watched, stunned, as Mayor Taylor shook his finger at his son, whose shoulders were slumped in unmistakable admission of guilt. Could it be? Could this disaster, at least, not be her doing? The fire was contained before it could spread to the buildings, though the decorations were a total loss. As the excitement died down and families began heading home, Olivia remained where she was, trying to process what Emma had told her. "You all right?" Wyatt's voice came from behind her, concerned and slightly breathless from his exertions with the bucket line. Olivia turned to face him. His shirt was soot-stained, his hair damp with sweat and water from the buckets, but his eyes were clear and focused on her. "Emma says Billy Taylor caused the fire," she said slowly. "That it wasn't, that I didn't." Understanding dawned on Wyatt's face. "You thought it was your so-called curse." Olivia nodded, afraid to hope. "But if it wasn't?" "It wasn't," Wyatt confirmed. "Just a careless boy showing off." "Nothing to do with you. The flood happens every few years, ask anyone." "But in my past," Wyatt stepped closer, taking her hands in his. "Olivia, bad things happen. That's life, especially out here on the frontier. It's not because of you, it's just chance, circumstance." She wanted to believe him, desperately. But years of whispers and accusations, of watching disasters unfold in her wake, had left deep scars on her soul. "Come have dinner with us tomorrow," Wyatt said suddenly. "At the ranch. Let me show you that your luck's changing." Olivia hesitated, torn between hope and fear. "I don't want to bring trouble to your home, Wyatt." "You won't," he said with such certainty that she almost believed him. "Just dinner. Emma would love it, and so would I." In the end, she couldn't resist the pleading in his eyes. "All right. Dinner tomorrow." His smile was like sunrise after the darkest night. "I'll come fetch you at noon." As she walked back to Mrs. Patterson's sister's house, where she was still staying until the boarding house was fully repaired, Olivia allowed herself to consider a dangerous possibility. What if her curse wasn't real? What if she had been blaming herself all these years for simple bad luck and coincidence? It seemed too much to hope for. And yet, "I've been due for some luck," Wyatt had said. Maybe his luck was strong enough to counteract hers. Maybe together they could break whatever shadow had hung over her for so long. For the first time in years, Olivia fell asleep without dread weighing on her heart. The Triple R Ranch sprawled across 1,000 acres of rolling prairie, with the house itself situated on a gentle rise overlooking a meandering creek. It was a substantial structure, larger than Olivia had expected, with a wide porch wrapping around 3 sides and sturdy outbuildings dotting the surrounding area. "It's beautiful," she breathed as Wyatt helped her down from the wagon. "Been in the Rivers family for 2 generations," he explained, pride evident in his voice. "My pa brought my ma here as a bride in '45, built this house with his own hands, said a proper lady deserved a proper home, not some sod house or cabin." Emma bounded out the front door before they'd even reached the porch steps. "Miss Owens, you came. Did Uncle Wyatt tell you we're having fried chicken and apple pie? I helped make the pie." Olivia laughed at the girl's enthusiasm. "He mentioned there would be food, yes." "The pie sounds wonderful, Emma." Inside, the house was as impressive as its exterior suggested. Solid furniture, some of it clearly handmade with care, filled the rooms. Bright quilts added splashes of color, and bookshelves lined one wall of the parlor, a sight that made Olivia's heart leap with pleasure. "You like to read?" she asked, running her finger along the spines of volumes ranging from practical farming guides to Shakespeare. "My mother's collection, mostly," Wyatt said, coming to stand beside her. "She was a schoolteacher before she married my father. Always said education was the greatest gift you could give a child." Olivia turned to face him, struck by this new connection between them. "My mother was a teacher too." It's what I always wanted to do." Their eyes met and something passed between them, a recognition, a shared understanding. For a moment, Olivia forgot her fears, her curse, the years of running. In Wyatt's clear blue gaze, she saw only possibility. The spell was broken by Emma's call from the kitchen that dinner was ready. The meal that followed was the most enjoyable Olivia could remember having in years. Emma chattered about school and her friends. Wyatt spoke of the ranch and his plans for expanding the cattle herd. And Olivia found herself sharing stories of her own childhood in Ohio, before the whispers began, before she became known as the girl who brought misfortune. After dinner, Emma insisted on showing Olivia the barn and introducing her to the animals, the horses, the milk cow, the chickens, and Emma's own cat with a recent litter of kittens. "You can have one when they're old enough," Emma offered generously. "Uncle Wyatt says we need to find homes for all of them." "That's very kind, but I'm not sure Mrs. Patterson allows pets at the boarding house," Olivia demurred, though she was touched by the offer. "Maybe you won't be at the boarding house by then," Emma said with the innocence of a child who saw the world in straightforward terms. "Maybe you'll be here." Olivia felt heat rise to her cheeks. "Emma, that's not Emma," Wyatt interrupted from the barn door, his own face slightly flushed. "Why don't you go check on that pie, make sure it's cooling properly?" After the girl had skipped off toward the house, Wyatt approached Olivia, his expression apologetic. "Sorry about that. She gets notions in her head." "It's all right," Olivia assured him, though her heart was racing. "She's a child. Children say whatever comes to mind." Wyatt shifted his weight, suddenly seeming uncertain, a stark contrast to his usual confident demeanor. "Would it be such an outlandish notion?" he asked finally. Olivia's breath caught. "What do you mean, you here?" He gestured around them. "Not right away, of course. I'm not that presumptuous," But someday, she didn't know how to respond. The longing she felt for home, for belonging, for Wyatt himself warred with the fear that had governed her life for so long. Wyatt, a low rumble interrupted her, growing quickly louder. The ground beneath their feet began to tremble. "Stampede!" Wyatt shouted, grabbing her arm and pulling her toward the barn door. "Get inside!" They barely made it to safety before a herd of cattle thundered past the barn, kicking up dust and bellowing in panic. Wyatt pushed Olivia behind him, shielding her with his body as they watched through the doorway. "Those aren't my cattle," he said, confusion evident in his voice. "Those are Blackwood steers from the next range over." As the last of the animals passed, a rider appeared, trying desperately to turn the herd. Wyatt immediately ran out to help, whistling for his own horse, which came trotting from a nearby corral. "Stay here," he ordered Olivia as he swung into the saddle. "I need to help before they destroy half the county." Olivia watched him ride off, her heart in her throat. "It's happening again," a voice whispered in her mind. "Your curse. This is what happens when you let yourself hope." She sank to her knees in the barn doorway, trembling. First the flood, then the fire, now this. 3 disasters since her arrival in Caldwell. No matter what Wyatt said, no matter how much she wanted to believe him, the pattern was undeniable. She was still there when Emma found her some time later. "Miss Owens, are you all right?" "I heard the stampede, but Uncle Wyatt told me to stay in the house, and why are you crying?" Olivia hadn't even realized tears were streaming down her face. She wiped them away quickly. "I'm fine, Emma, just startled by the cattle." Emma sat beside her in the doorway. "Uncle Wyatt will fix it." "He always does." They sat in silence for a while, watching the dust settle on the horizon. "Emma," Olivia began cautiously, "has your uncle told you anything about my reputation?" The girl frowned. "What reputation?" "Some people say I bring bad luck, that disasters follow me." Emma's frown deepened. "That's stupid. Bad luck isn't a thing you can catch like a cold." The simplicity of the child's logic made Olivia smile despite her fears. "Some would disagree." "Well, they're wrong," Emma said with the absolute certainty of youth. "Uncle Wyatt says people blame others for misfortune because they're scared of admitting the world's just chaotic sometimes." Olivia blinked in surprise. "He said that?" Emma nodded. "When I was blaming myself for my pa dying. I thought maybe if I'd been a better daughter, he wouldn't have gone to war. Uncle Wyatt told me bad things happen, and it's not anybody's fault. It's just life." The words struck Olivia to her core. Could it really be that simple? Could all these years of blame and self-recrimination be based on nothing more than humanity's need to find patterns in chaos, to assign blame rather than accept the random cruelty of fate? Before she could pursue this line of thought, hoofbeats announced Wyatt's return. He dismounted heavily, looking tired but satisfied. "Got them turned and headed back to Blackwood's range," he reported, coming to join them in the doorway. His new hand left a gate open. "Young fool's probably going to be looking for work tomorrow." "No one was hurt?" Olivia asked anxiously. "Not a scratch," Wyatt assured her, removing his hat to wipe sweat from his brow. "Though Blackwood's pride might be wounded. Man prides himself on running a tight operation." Relief washed over Olivia, followed quickly by confusion. If this was her curse at work, shouldn't there have been injuries, destruction, the usual trail of misfortune that seemed to follow in her wake? Wyatt seemed to read her thoughts. "Another disaster averted," he said quietly. "Still think you're cursed, Olivia?" She didn't know what to think anymore. 3 potential catastrophes since her arrival in Caldwell: the flood, the fire, the stampede, and yet none had resulted in the kind of tragedy that had driven her from town to town in the past. Could Wyatt be right? Could it all have been coincidence and her own guilty conscience? "I don't know," she admitted. "I've believed it for so long." Wyatt reached out, his hand covering hers where it rested on her knee. "Give yourself a chance, Olivia. Give us a chance." The plea in his eyes was impossible to resist. Slowly, hesitantly, she nodded. "One step at a time," she whispered. His smile was like sunshine breaking through clouds. "That's all I ask." The days that followed took on a rhythm that Olivia had never thought possible for someone like her. Mornings were for teaching, afternoons for grading and preparation, and evenings. Evenings were increasingly spent with Wyatt and Emma. Sometimes he would arrive at the schoolhouse with Emma at the end of the day, offering to drive Olivia to the now repaired boarding house. Other times, he would appear at her door with an invitation to dinner or to attend a town event. Once he brought her a kitten from Emma's cat's litter, a tiny orange ball of fur that Mrs. Patterson, contrary to Olivia's expectations, had cooed over and immediately welcomed. "Every home needs a mouser," the landlady had declared, scratching the kitten behind its ears. "We'll call him Lucky." The name had given Olivia pause, but not the usual dread. Instead, she found herself wondering if perhaps luck could change, if Lucky might indeed bring good fortune rather than bad. As autumn deepened toward winter, Olivia found herself settling into Caldwell in a way she had never settled anywhere before. Her students were progressing well, the townsfolk greeted her warmly on the streets, and Wyatt was becoming essential to her happiness in a way that both thrilled and frightened her. They had not spoken again of the future, of the possibility Wyatt had hinted at during her visit to the ranch. But it hung between them, unacknowledged but ever present, in the way his hand lingered on hers when he helped her down from a wagon, in the softness of his eyes when he watched her with the children, in the increasing frequency of his visits to town on the flimsiest of pretexts. November brought the first snow, and with it, preparations for Thanksgiving. Olivia had planned to spend the holiday quietly at the boarding house, as she had spent most holidays since leaving home, but Wyatt had other ideas. "You'll join us at the ranch," he said, not a question but a statement when he came to collect Emma the Friday before Thanksgiving week. "Emma's mother and her new husband will be there. My sister's been wanting to meet you." Olivia hesitated. "I wouldn't want to intrude on a family gathering." "You wouldn't be intruding," Wyatt assured her, his eyes earnest. "You'd be completing it." The implication of his words sent a flutter through her chest. "Wyatt, please," he said simply. And so Thanksgiving found Olivia at the Triple R Ranch once more, helping Emma and her mother, Sarah, prepare the feast. Sarah Rivers Patterson was a feminine version of her brother, tall and straight-backed, with the same striking blue eyes and direct manner. "My brother's been half in love with you since the day you arrived in Caldwell," Sarah told Olivia bluntly as they peeled potatoes together in the kitchen. "Never seen him like this over a woman before." Olivia nearly sliced her finger in surprise. I don't know what to say." "Don't say anything to me," Sarah replied with a knowing smile. "I'm just giving you fair warning. Wyatt's a deliberate man, doesn't rush into things, but once his mind's made up." She shrugged expressively. "Has he said something to you?" Olivia couldn't help asking. "Doesn't need to." "I've known my brother all his life." Sarah's expression softened. "He deserves happiness, Miss Owens. After all he's done for Emma and me since Thomas died, he deserves someone who sees him for the good man he is." The conversation left Olivia thoughtful as they continued preparations. When they all gathered around the table, Wyatt at the head, Olivia to his right, Sarah and her new husband James across from her, and Emma bouncing with excitement at the foot, she found herself studying Wyatt's profile, wondering about Sarah's words. "Half in love since the day you arrived." Could it be true? As if sensing her gaze, Wyatt turned to her, a question in his eyes. Olivia smiled reassuringly, and he returned the smile before rising to carve the turkey. The meal was everything a Thanksgiving feast should be: abundant, joyful, filled with laughter and stories. As Olivia listened to the family banter, occasionally drawn into the conversation by Wyatt's gentle prompting or Emma's eager questions, she felt a longing so intense it was almost painful. This was what she had been missing all these years. Not just a home, but a family. People who knew her, who welcomed her, who wanted her presence. After dinner, while Sarah and James settled in the parlor with Emma for a game of checkers, Wyatt invited Olivia to see the sunset from the porch. The air was crisp with approaching winter, and Olivia wrapped her shawl tighter around her shoulders as they stood at the railing, watching the sky turn spectacular shades of orange and pink. "Cold?" Wyatt asked, noticing her shiver. "A little," she admitted. Without hesitation, he stepped behind her, wrapping his arms around her waist and drawing her back against his chest. The warmth of him seeped through her, and Olivia found herself relaxing into his embrace, her head fitting perfectly beneath his chin. They stood in comfortable silence as the sun sank lower, painting the prairie in golden light. Inside, they could hear Emma's delighted laughter as she apparently triumphed at checkers. "This is nice," Wyatt murmured, his breath warm against her hair. Olivia agreed, not trusting herself with words. "Could be like this all the time," he continued, his voice low but clear. "You, me, Emma. A family." Olivia's heart skipped. She turned in his arms to face him, finding his expression open and vulnerable in a way she'd never seen before. "Wyatt, I love you, Olivia," he said simply. "Have almost from the first day when you warned me about your supposed bad luck and I told you I was due for some of my own. Every day since then has proven me right." "Nothing terrible has happened," she whispered, still hardly daring to believe it. "No real disasters." "Nothing we couldn't handle together," he corrected gently. "That's what life is, Olivia. Challenges that come, ready or not. The question is who you want beside you when they do." She searched his face, finding nothing but sincerity and love. "I want you," she admitted, her voice barely audible. "I'm just afraid—" "Don't be," he interrupted, one hand coming up to cup her cheek. "I'm not, never have been where you're concerned." And then he was kissing her, his lips warm and firm against hers, his arms drawing her closer until she could feel the steady beat of his heart against her own. Olivia melted into him, all doubts temporarily forgotten in the wonder of his embrace. When they finally parted, both slightly breathless, Wyatt rested his forehead against hers. "Marry me, Olivia. Be my wife, be Emma's mother, be the mistress of Triple R. Let me show you every day that there's no such thing as bad luck, only life and how we face it." Tears welled in Olivia's eyes. "You really believe that, don't you? That I'm not cursed?" "I believe in you," Wyatt said firmly. "In us. The rest is just superstition and coincidence." Olivia took a deep breath, closing her eyes for a moment. When she opened them, decision made, Wyatt was watching her with such hope that it nearly broke her heart. "Yes," she whispered. "Yes, I'll marry you, Wyatt Rivers." His smile was brighter than the setting sun as he lifted her off her feet, spinning her in a circle of joy before setting her down for another kiss, this one even more passionate than the first. From inside came the sound of applause. They turned to see Sarah, James, and Emma watching through the window, all three beaming. "Told you she'd say yes." Emma crowed triumphantly. Wyatt laughed, keeping one arm firmly around Olivia's waist. "Were you eavesdropping, young lady?" "Didn't have to," Emma replied with a grin. "You've been making cow eyes at each other for months. Even Billy Taylor noticed, and he doesn't notice anything that isn't about him." The adults laughed, and Sarah pushed open the door to embrace first her brother, then Olivia. "Welcome to the family," she said warmly. "Officially." As congratulations and well wishes surrounded them, Olivia felt a weight lifting from her shoulders, the weight of years of guilt and fear, of believing herself somehow marked for misfortune. In Wyatt's steadfast love, in Emma's acceptance, in Sarah and James's warm welcome, she found something she had stopped believing in long ago: hope. They were married on Christmas Eve, in the Caldwell church decorated with evergreen boughs and red ribbons. The entire town turned out for the celebration, filling the small building to capacity. Olivia wore a dress of deep ivory satin that Mrs. Patterson and several other ladies from town had helped her make, with Emma proudly serving as her bridesmaid. Wyatt, standing at the altar in a new suit, watched her walk down the aisle with an expression of such adoration that several of the older women in the congregation were seen dabbing at their eyes. "Dearly beloved," the minister began, his voice carrying clearly through the hushed church, "we are gathered here today to witness the union of Wyatt James Rivers and Olivia May Owens. As they exchanged vows, promises to love, honor, and cherish, in good times and bad, in sickness and health, Olivia felt the last of her fears melting away. Whatever came in the future, they would face it together. I now pronounce you husband and wife," the minister declared at last. "You may kiss your bride." Wyatt's kiss was gentle but filled with promise, and when they turned to face the congregation as Mr. and Mrs. Rivers, the cheer that went up seemed to lift the very roof of the church. The celebration afterward, held in the town hall, was the most joyous Caldwell had seen in years. There was dancing and feasting, toasts and tears, laughter and love in abundance. Through it all, Wyatt kept Olivia close, as if afraid she might disappear if he let go for too long. "Happy?" he asked as they swayed together to a slow waltz, the room around them a blur of festive color. "More than I ever thought possible," Olivia replied honestly, resting her head against his shoulder. "Thank you for not believing in my curse." Wyatt's arm tightened around her waist. "Thank you for finally believing in us instead." As the evening drew to a close, they prepared to depart for their wedding night at the ranch. Emma would be staying with Sarah and James in town, giving the newlyweds a few days of privacy before family life began in earnest. Standing on the steps of the town hall, Olivia tossed her bridal bouquet into the crowd of unmarried women. To everyone's delight, it was caught by young Martha Wilson, the shopkeeper's daughter, who blushed crimson as the town's eligible bachelors suddenly seemed to take notice of her. Wyatt helped Olivia into the waiting sleigh, tucking warm blankets around her against the winter night. As they prepared to set off, Mayor Taylor approached, hand extended. "Congratulations, Rivers," he said heartily, shaking Wyatt's hand. "You've got yourself a fine woman there." "Don't I know it?" Wyatt agreed with a smile for his bride. The mayor turned to Olivia. "And Mrs. Rivers, the town council met yesterday. We'd like to offer you a permanent position as Caldwell's schoolteacher. Contract renewed annually, of course, but with the understanding that the position is yours as long as you want it." Olivia's eyes widened in surprise. "Thank you, Mayor. I'm honored." "You've done wonders with the children," Taylor continued. "Even my Billy's showing improvement, and I'd nearly given up hope there." As they drove away amid a shower of rice and well wishes, Olivia leaned against her husband's strong shoulder, marveling at how much her life had changed in just a few months. "Permanent position," she murmured. "They want me to stay." "Of course they do," Wyatt replied, steering the horses expertly through the snowy streets. "You're the best teacher this town's ever seen." "No one's afraid of me," she said wonderingly. "No one blames me for the flood or the fire or the stampede." "Because none of it was your fault," Wyatt said firmly. "Never was. Not here, not in any of those other towns." Olivia wasn't entirely convinced about the past, but she was beginning to believe in their future together. The ranch house was warm and welcoming when they arrived, with fires lit in the hearth and bedrooms. Sarah had been by earlier to prepare for their arrival, leaving a cold supper laid out in the kitchen and fresh linens on the bed, now their bed. As Wyatt carried her over the threshold, Olivia was struck by the rightness of it all. This house, this man, this life, it was everything she had stopped allowing herself to dream of. Later, as they lay together in the quiet darkness of their bedroom, Olivia traced the strong line of her husband's jaw with gentle fingers. "You really think it was all just coincidence?" she asked softly. "All those accidents, all those disasters?" Wyatt caught her hand, pressing a kiss to her palm. "I think people see patterns where none exist. I think bad things happen and people need someone to blame. I think you were convenient. But so many things. And how many good things happened that you didn't count?" he challenged gently. "How many children learned to read because of you? How many lives did you touch positively?" Olivia had never considered this perspective before. "I don't know. More than you realize, I'd wager." Wyatt pulled her closer, his warmth enveloping her. "You're not bad luck, Olivia Rivers. You're the best thing that ever happened to me and Emma." As she drifted to sleep in her husband's arms, Olivia allowed herself to truly believe him, perhaps for the first time. Spring came to Kansas, with its usual capricious nature, warm days followed by sudden freezes, gentle rains turning to thunderstorms without warning. The Triple R Ranch thrived under Wyatt's careful management, and Olivia found herself settling into the dual roles of schoolteacher and rancher's wife with unexpected ease. Emma, initially wary of having to share her uncle's attention, had blossomed with Olivia's gentle guidance. The girl who had once declared she didn't need a mother now sought Olivia's advice on everything from schoolwork to the mysteries of becoming a young lady. "You think I might teach someday, like you?" Emma asked one evening as they sat on the porch, Olivia grading papers while Emma practiced her needlework. "I think you could do anything you set your mind to," Olivia replied honestly. "You have a quick intelligence and a kind heart, both essential for a good teacher." Emma beamed at the praise. "Uncle Wyatt, I mean. Pa says I'm stubborn enough to succeed at whatever I choose." The casual mention of Emma's new name for Wyatt, a recent development that had brought tears to his eyes, the first time she'd used it, warmed Olivia's heart. They were becoming a true family, the three of them, bound by love rather than merely blood or circumstance. Life wasn't perfect, of course. There were still challenges: a late frost that damaged some early plantings, a case of colic that nearly claimed one of the prize horses, a controversy in town over the school curriculum that required all of Olivia's diplomatic skills to navigate. But none of these challenges seemed tied to Olivia's presence. They were simply the usual trials of life on the frontier, faced and overcome together. As summer approached, Olivia began to suspect a new development, one that both thrilled and terrified her. Her monthly courses were late. She found herself unusually tired in the afternoons, and certain foods that she had always enjoyed now turned her stomach. She kept her suspicions to herself at first, not wanting to raise hopes that might be dashed. But when a second month passed without her courses appearing, Olivia knew she could no longer deny the likelihood. She chose a quiet evening to share the news after Emma had gone to bed. Wyatt was sitting at the kitchen table, reviewing breeding records for the cattle, when Olivia placed a cup of coffee beside him and perched on the adjacent chair. "Wyatt," she began, her voice soft with emotion, I believe I'm going to have a baby." His head snapped up, eyes wide with wonder. "A baby? You're sure?" Olivia nodded, a smile spreading across her face despite her nervousness. As sure as I can be without the doctor's confirmation, all the signs are there. Wyatt was out of his chair in an instant, lifting her into his arms and spinning her around the kitchen, his laughter joyful and unreserved. "Careful," Olivia protested, though she was laughing too. "If I wasn't already dizzy enough." He set her down gently, his hands framing her face. "A baby," he repeated, awe in his voice. "Our baby." And then he was kissing her, pouring all his love and happiness into the embrace. When they parted, both breathless, Wyatt rested one large hand tentatively on her still flat stomach. "When?" he asked. "January, I think. A new year, a new life." Wyatt's smile was radiant. "Perfect timing. The winter months are slower on the ranch. I'll be able to help more with the baby and with Emma." They shared the news with Emma the next morning over breakfast. The girl's reaction was everything they could have hoped for: initial shock, followed by exuberant excitement. "I'm going to be a big sister," she exclaimed, bouncing in her chair. "Can I help name the baby? Can I help take care of it?" "Of course you can," Olivia assured her, touched by her enthusiasm. "We'll need all the help we can get." As Olivia's pregnancy progressed, she found herself waiting anxiously for something to go wrong. Despite all evidence to the contrary, despite Wyatt's unwavering faith and Emma's excited preparations, some small part of her still feared that her old curse might manifest again, this time targeting the precious new life growing within her. But the weeks passed without incident. The baby grew strong and active, kicking so vigorously at times that Wyatt could see the movement through Olivia's dresses. The doctor in Caldwell pronounced both mother and child healthy at every visit. "You're blooming, Mrs. Rivers," he declared during her 7th month. "One of the healthiest expectant mothers I've seen." As her due date approached, Wyatt insisted on hiring help at the house, a young widow named Mrs. Fletcher, who came in 3 times a week to assist with the heavier chores. Olivia continued teaching until Christmas break, when Mayor Taylor himself came to the schoolhouse to insist she begin her maternity leave. "We've arranged for Mrs. Taylor to take over until Easter," he informed her. "By then, you should be ready to return if you wish." The consideration touched her deeply. "Thank you, Mayor. I do hope to return. Teaching it's part of who I am." Taylor nodded understanding. "The position will be waiting for you, Mrs. Rivers. You've earned the town's respect and gratitude many times over." January arrived with a bitter cold snap that kept most of the county huddled indoors. Olivia, now enormous and uncomfortable, spent her days preparing for the baby's arrival, folding tiny clothes, arranging the nursery corner in their bedroom, reading everything she could find about infant care. Wyatt hovered solicitously, rarely straying far from the house despite the needs of the ranch. His foreman, a capable man named Wilson, assured him that everything was under control. "Been running cattle in Kansas for 30 years, Mr. Rivers," Wilson said gruffly when Wyatt expressed concern about a pending delivery of feed. "Think I can handle it while you tend to your wife?" The baby came during a snowstorm, a night of howling wind and swirling flakes that made the journey to town for the doctor impossible. But Mrs. Fletcher, who had stayed at the ranch that evening specifically because of the threatening weather, proved to have experience as a midwife. "Not my first birthing," she assured Wyatt as she calmly organized hot water, clean linens, and the other necessities. "Won't be my last, God willing." Emma was banished to her room with strict instructions to remain there, though Olivia could hear the girl pacing anxiously as her labor progressed. Wyatt refused to leave her side, holding her hand through each contraction, wiping her brow, murmuring encouragement when the pain seemed unbearable. "You're the strongest woman I know," he told her as dawn approached and the labor intensified. You can do this, Olivia. You're doing wonderfully. Just as the first pale light of morning began to filter through the curtains, with one final, tremendous effort, Olivia brought their son into the world. His lusty cry filled the room, drawing a sob of relief and joy from his exhausted mother. "A boy, Mrs. Fletcher announced, quickly cleaning and wrapping the infant before placing him in Olivia's eager arms. "A fine, healthy boy." Wyatt, tears streaming unashamedly down his face, leaned over to study their child, the tiny face still red and wrinkled from birth. The surprisingly full head of dark hair, the perfect miniature fingers that wrapped reflexively around his father's much larger one when offered. "He's perfect," Wyatt whispered, awe evident in his voice. "Absolutely perfect." Olivia couldn't take her eyes off their son. "We did it," she murmured, still hardly able to believe the reality of him. "He's really here." A tentative knock at the door announced Emma's presence. "Can I come in?" She called softly. "Is the baby here?" "Come meet your brother," Wyatt invited, opening the door for his niece, now as much his daughter as if she'd been born to him. Emma approached the bed cautiously, her eyes huge as she peered at the bundle in Olivia's arms. "He's so small," she whispered. "But strong," Olivia assured her, shifting slightly so Emma could see the baby better. "Would you like to hold him?" The girl nodded eagerly, settling carefully in the chair Wyatt pulled close to the bed. With guidance, she soon had the infant cradled securely in her arms, her expression a mixture of awe and protective pride. "What's his name?" she asked, not looking up from her brother's face. Olivia glanced at Wyatt, who nodded encouragement. They had discussed names at length but had waited to make the final decision until they met their child. "Thomas," Olivia said softly. "Thomas James Rivers." Emma's head jerked up, her eyes filling with tears. "Like my pa, and pa's middle name," Wyatt nodded, resting a hand on her shoulder. "If that's all right with you." "It's more than all right," Emma assured them, looking back down at the baby with renewed wonder. "Hello, Thomas. I'm your sister Emma. I'm going to teach you everything I know, as Mrs. Fletcher bustled about, cleaning up and preparing a light meal for the new mother. Olivia watched her family, Wyatt hovering protectively over Emma and the baby, Emma cooing softly to her new brother, little Thomas sleeping peacefully in his sister's arms, and felt a sense of completion she had never thought possible. There was no curse. There never had been. There was only life with all its joys and sorrows, its challenges and triumphs. And there was love, the love that had brought her to this moment, to this family, to this overwhelming happiness. "Thank you," she whispered to Wyatt when he returned to her side, taking her hand in his. "For what?" he asked, raising her fingers to his lips. "For believing in me when I couldn't believe in myself. For showing me that bad luck was just a story I told myself." Wyatt smiled, the smile that had captivated her from their first meeting. "I told you I was due for some luck," he reminded her. "But this," he gestured to include her, the baby, Emma, the home they had built together, "this isn't luck. This is what happens when you don't let fear stop you from reaching for happiness." As if in agreement, Thomas began to fuss, hungry for his first meal. Emma carefully transferred him back to Olivia's arms, and with Mrs. Fletcher's guidance, the new mother learned how to nurse her son. Watching his wife and child, Wyatt felt a contentment so deep it seemed to reach to his very soul. When Olivia had first warned him about her supposed curse, he'd responded with a flippant comment about being due for luck. Little had he known how profoundly true those words would prove to be. "Not luck," he corrected himself as Olivia looked up at him, her eyes shining with love and wonder. Not luck, but love. The love that had given him the courage to pursue a woman others feared. The love that had given Olivia the strength to trust again, to put down roots, to build a life with him and Emma. The love that had now brought them Thomas, the newest addition to their family. Outside, the snowstorm had passed, leaving the world transformed clean and white and full of possibility. Inside, in the warmth of their home, the Rivers family began the first day of their new life together. Not cursed, not lucky, but blessed in all the ways that truly mattered. 5 years later, on a warm summer evening, the Triple R Ranch hummed with activity. Lanterns glowed around the yard, tables groaned under the weight of food, and fiddle music filled the air as neighbors and friends gathered to celebrate the birth of Olivia and Wyatt's second child, a daughter they had named Sarah Hope. Thomas, now a sturdy 5-year-old with his father's blue eyes and his mother's quick intelligence, raced around the yard with the other children, occasionally stopping to peek at his new sister, who slept peacefully in a cradle on the porch, despite the festivities surrounding her. Emma, 17 and blossoming into a beautiful young woman, sat with a group of friends, occasionally casting glances at the mayor's son. Billy Taylor, no longer the troublesome boy who had started a fire at the harvest social, but a young man of 18 who had recently begun calling at the ranch with transparent excuses to see Emma. Wyatt stood with a group of ranchers, discussing the promising summer rains and the outlook for the cattle market, while keeping one eye on his wife. Olivia moved through the gathering with easy grace, accepting congratulations and showing off the baby to admiring guests, her face radiant with happiness. Mrs. Patterson, now well into her 60s but still robust, claimed the honor of holding Sarah Hope when Olivia needed a brief rest. "She has your smile," the older woman declared. "But Wyatt's determination, I think. Look how she grips my finger." Mayor Taylor raised his glass in a toast. "To the Rivers family, Wyatt, Olivia, Emma, Thomas, and little Sarah Hope, may your good fortune continue for generations to come." As the guests echoed the sentiment, Olivia caught Wyatt's eye across the yard. He smiled at her, that same smile that had won her heart when he declared he was due for some luck. In that smile was the history of their years together, the challenges they had faced and overcome, the love that had grown deeper with each passing season, the family they had built together. No one in Caldwell remembered the old whispers about Olivia bringing bad luck. Those suspicions had been buried beneath years of evidence to the contrary: a thriving school under her leadership, a prosperous ranch, healthy children, a strong community. Later, after the guests had departed and the children were asleep, Olivia and Wyatt stood together on the porch, arms around each other as they gazed up at the star-filled Kansas sky. "Happy?" Wyatt asked, the question that had become a familiar ritual between them. "Completely," Olivia assured him, resting her head against his shoulder. "And grateful, every day." "For what?" he teased, though he knew the answer. "For you, for our family, for this life we've built." She turned in his arms to face him. "For believing in me when I warned you about bad luck, and smiling that smile of yours and telling me you were due for some." Wyatt kissed her softly, still as moved by her touch as he had been on their first meeting. "Best gamble I ever took," he murmured against her lips. Inside, baby Sarah made a small sound, and they both turned toward the house, ready to attend to their daughter's needs. As they walked arm in arm into the home they had filled with love and laughter, the night sky seemed to brighten with a shower of falling stars, nature's own celebration of a curse transformed into blessing, of fear vanquished by love, of a family who had created their own luck through courage, faith, and unwavering devotion to each other. And in that moment, as in all the moments that would follow, Olivia knew with absolute certainty. There was no such thing as bad luck, only the paths we choose and the hands we hold along the way.